Welcome. Before this story touches your heart, do me a quick favor. Subscribe to the channel and drop a comment telling me what country or city you're watching from. I love knowing how far these words travel. Okay, let's dive in. They say God's love never fails, but sometimes life has a way of making you doubt that truth. There are those who grew up with so little that they learned to fall asleep with their stomachs empty, to endure mockery without fighting back, to hear over and over that they're worthless, until one day they get so used to walking with their eyes down that it feels like heaven itself has turned its back on them. This is the story of a boy from the countryside, an orphan living in poverty, who knew rejection and shame from such a young age that he came to believe his existence didn't matter to anyone. But on a quiet dirt road near a creek, when no one was watching, and he himself could barely carry the weight of his exhaustion, Daniel did something few would do. He shared the little he had with a stranger in distress. He thought he was simply helping someone in need, never imagining that this simple act, born from a wounded yet noble heart, was about to reveal a truth that would change his life forever. His name was Daniel. He lived in a small wooden shack on the outskirts of a rural town, surrounded by rolling hills and farmland. The shack looked more like a memory than an actual dwelling. Weathered planks, a roof patched with rusted metal sheets, broken windows covered with torn plastic. Daniel had been orphaned very young. First his father left, worn down by years of back-breaking labor and sickness. Not long after, his mother, consumed by grief and poverty, took to her bed and never rose again. The funeral was quick and quiet. A couple of neighbors there out of obligation, a small wooden cross, and nothing more. From that day forward, the boy was alone. Daniel grew up feeling like he was in the way. In the way at other people's houses, in the way on the roads, in the way during conversations that went quiet when he passed by. He learned early that to survive, he had to work, even though he was just a child. So he started offering to run errands, help with harvests, tend to animals. They didn't pay him much. Sometimes a few coins, other times just food. But for him, even a bowl of soup was a treasure. Not everyone saw him as a hard-working boy. Some looked at him as the orphan, the poor thing, the one with nobody. And others, those with harder hearts, saw him as someone they could mistreat without consequences. "Hurry up, kid," they would yell. "If you don't like it, get out. You got nowhere else to go, do you?" The words hurt, but he learned to swallow the pain. Even so, there was something Daniel hadn't lost, a simple way of talking to God. It wasn't prayer memorized from a book, just short conversations whispered to the wind, to the night sky, to the murmur of the creek. Sometimes, while walking barefoot along the dirt path, he would look up and whisper, "Lord, if you're really out there, watch over me. I'm not asking for big things, just please don't forget about me." One afternoon, Daniel worked for Mr. Harrison, one of the toughest men in the area. He worked from early morning under the blazing sun, gathering sacks, hauling firewood, carrying water. His small hands filled with blisters, but he told himself it was worth it. As evening fell, Mr. Harrison handed him a small sack of food, a loaf of bread, some rice, a few potatoes. For Daniel, it was like receiving a chest of gold. As he walked back, he held the sack against his chest, as if afraid the wind might snatch it away. But on the road he ran into a group of boys from town, older than him. They had seen him many times and enjoyed tormenting him. "Look, here comes the orphan," one said. "Let's see what you got." Daniel clutched the sack tighter. "It's mine," he responded in a low voice. One of the boys stepped closer and gave him a shove. In a second, the sack fell to the ground and part of the contents spilled onto the dirt. The bread got covered in dust, the rice mixed with small pebbles. The boys laughed even harder, and then left. Daniel knelt down and picked up what he could. He carefully brushed off the bread, separated the rice that could still be saved. His hands trembled, not just from exhaustion, but from silent rage. He walked for a while until, like so many times before, he lifted his gaze to the sky. "God," he whispered, "I know there are people who suffer more than me, but am I really so small that you don't even see me? If you're not going to take these trials away from me, At least give me the strength not to become like them. The path to his house passed by a creek. It was a lonely stretch, just trees, rocks, and the sound of running water. Daniel liked that place. There he could cry without anyone seeing, talk to God without interruptions. That afternoon, as he approached with his half-ruined sack, he noticed something different. In the distance, sitting on a large rock near the bank, was an old man. He wore simple clothes, worn by time. He had long white hair and beard and held a wooden walking stick. He looked tired, almost fragile. "Good afternoon, son," the old man said with a voice that was soft but firm. "Afternoon," Daniel responded shyly. The old man looked at the sack. "I see you're coming from a long day. Could you help me with something? I've walked a long way and I'm feeling very weak. I haven't eaten all day. Would you have anything you could share with me?" The question fell like a stone in the boy's heart. The little he carried was the fruit of an entire day's work, of blisters and humiliation. He had been mistreated, mocked, and now someone was asking him to share. Anyone would have thought, "I can't. Nobody shares with me. Why should I share?" Daniel lowered his gaze to the sack. He remembered the boys laughing, the bread on the ground. But another image came to mind, his mother. He remembered her breaking bread into small pieces when there was barely enough, and even so, saving a piece for someone who might come knocking. He remembered a phrase she used to repeat, "When you give from your heart, son, you never end up empty. God always finds a way to fill what is given with love." Daniel swallowed hard, walked closer, carefully opened the sack, and took out the bread. Not the smallest piece, but the best he had. He cleaned it with his hands and offered it. "It's not much, but it's what I have. Would you like to eat first?" The old man looked at him surprised. "And you? Aren't you hungry?" Daniel smiled with sweet sadness. "I'm always hungry, but you look more tired than me." The old man held the bread in his trembling hands. Before eating, he closed his eyes for a moment, as if saying a prayer. Then he took a small bite, eating slowly, savoring not just the food, but the gesture behind it. "Thank you, son. You don't know what this means." Daniel sat beside him, and for the first time in a long time, he felt that silence next to someone didn't weigh on him. After eating, the old man stood up with difficulty. "I must continue on my way. Could you help me cross this stretch? My legs aren't what they used to be." Daniel offered his shoulder for support. They walked slowly along the path. The old man spoke. "I've seen many people today. Many have more than you, but no one stopped to help me. You, who have almost nothing, didn't hesitate to share." "I don't know if I did the right thing," Daniel responded. "What I gave you was almost everything I had for today, but I couldn't have left you there alone." The old man smiled. "That's what makes the difference. Not how much you have, but what you do with the little you have. Your heart has spoken louder than your need." They walked until they reached a point where the creek seemed to shine with a different light. The old man stopped and turned toward him. His eyes began to glow in a strange way, as if reflecting a light from within. "Daniel," he said, pronouncing his name with a tenderness the boy hadn't heard since his mother's voice. "Do you know who you've walked with today?" The boy frowned, confused. "With you, sir. With an old man who needed help." "I have walked with you since before you knew how to speak my name," he said. "I was with you the night you cried alone, the time you endured mockery without responding, the afternoon you looked at the sky asking me for strength not to harden your heart." Daniel felt a chill. I was just talking to God. I didn't know if anyone was listening." The old man took a step toward him. "Daniel, today you didn't just share your bread, you shared your faith. You gave me the best of yourself, even when the world has given you so little. You believed you were helping a stranger, but you were helping the one who never left you alone." The boy's heart began to beat hard. Who are you?" In that instant, the wind seemed to stop. The creek shone with different intensity, and the old man's face filled with a soft, golden light that didn't hurt the eyes, but enveloped everything. The voice was no longer just that of an old man. It was firm and warm, deep and close. I am the one who has been with you every step of the way, the one who heard your prayers in the night, the one who saw your tears when no one else looked, the God that many believe is absent, but who hides in lonely roads, in the hands that give, in hearts that even when broken choose goodness. Daniel fell to his knees, not because someone ordered him to, but because something inside understood he was before something too big for his mind, but perfect for his heart. Silent tears began to fall. I thought you had forgotten me. I thought I didn't matter to anyone. The old man, God, leaned down and placed a hand on the boy's head with a gesture so paternal, so full of love, that all of Daniel's lacks seemed less heavy. I never abandoned you. Every time you were humiliated, I was there. Every time hunger gripped your stomach, I embraced you in silence. But there was something only you could decide, whether the pain would make you hard or more human. And you chose well. You chose to keep giving. You chose to keep believing. And today, your small gesture in the eyes of the world has been great in mine. God extended his hand and touched the sack Daniel was carrying. What you gave today was not just bread. It was trust. It was love. And what is given from the heart, I multiply in ways the world doesn't understand. The sack began to feel heavier. Daniel looked at it surprised, opened it slowly, and his eyes widened. Inside there was no longer just the battered bread. Now he saw fresh bread, clean, more than one, abundant rice grains, potatoes in good condition, even fruits he hadn't tasted in a long time. I didn't have all this, he said, trembling. Today I'm not just feeding your body, God responded. I also want to feed your faith. I want you to remember, every time you feel you have nothing, that what is given with love is never lost. It just changes form and returns multiplied. You will return to your house, and little by little you will see doors opening where before there were only walls. I don't promise you a life without trials, because trials deepen the root of your faith, but I promise you something better. Never again will you walk, feeling that you're alone. The old man smiled with a tenderness that encompassed all of Daniel's story. When they humiliate you, remember this path. When you feel that no one sees you, remember my gaze. When poverty tries to convince you that you're worth nothing, remember that I myself walked with you disguised as a tired old man, and that you chose to help me. Daniel could only say, "Thank you for not leaving me alone, for not forgetting about me. You didn't forget me either when you most needed to look only at your own pain. And that kind of heart I honor." Then the light around the old man began to fade gently. Little by little the figure became simpler, until when Daniel blinked, he no longer saw him. Only the path, the creek, the sack in his hands, and a peace in his chest that he had never felt before remained. Daniel returned to his small house with the full sack and an overflowing heart. That night, for the first time in a long time, he didn't eat quickly like someone afraid the food would run out. He ate slowly, grateful, savoring each bite as a reminder that God had been there. The next day, something began to change. His neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, approached him surprised. "Daniel, where did you get so much food?" The boy smiled. "I worked, and God helped me," he simply responded. She looked into his eyes and saw something different. He was no longer the same dimmed boy. There was in him a quiet strength, a new light. Over time, people in town began to notice that despite his few things, Daniel always had something to share. A piece of bread for a neighbor, a fruit for a younger child, a sincere smile for those who were tired. He didn't become rich overnight, but doors began to open. A good man offered to teach him a trade. Another gave him stable and fair work. Someone invited him to study in the afternoons. Problems didn't completely disappear, but he stopped feeling like he was carrying everything alone. Every so often, when he went along the path by the creek, he would stop at the same place where he had helped the old man. He would close his eyes and breathe deeply. He didn't always see lights or hear supernatural voices, but he knew deep down that place marked a before and after. There he understood something he would never forget again. that God doesn't always arrive with thunder and visible miracles. Sometimes he arrives wrapped in the fragility of someone who needs your help. Sometimes he presents himself as a tired old man, a silent neighbor, a hungry stranger. And the real test isn't whether you have much. The true test is whether you're willing to give something, even when you think you have nothing. If this story is touching your heart right now, I want you to know you're not alone in what you're feeling. Drop a comment below and let me know what resonated with you. Your words might be exactly what someone else scrolling through needs to read today. Daniel's story isn't just about a poor country boy. It's also the story of anyone who has felt that God forgot about them, of anyone who has looked at the sky asking, "Why is this happening to me? Where are you when I need you most?" Perhaps you too have been enduring humiliations in silence for a long time. Lack of resources, rejection, loneliness. Maybe like Daniel, you've had to learn to swallow your tears to continue. And yet, in the midst of all that, there's something life hasn't been able to tear away from you: your capacity to be good. Because even when wounded, you keep helping. Even when tired, you keep giving. Even when afraid, you keep believing. The teaching of this story is simple but profound. God never abandons you. Even though the world doesn't look at you, he sees you. Even though no one values your effort, he counts every gesture. Even though your hands seem empty, he knows how much love fits in the little you give. And just like with Daniel, God often hides in those seemingly small encounters, in those old men of life who come to your path when you least expect it. The boy thought he was just helping a defenseless stranger, but in reality he was opening a heavenly door with a key that many despise, the sincere goodness that is born from the heart, even when there are no applause, no cameras, no visible rewards. Maybe today you don't have much. Maybe your sack also seems half empty. But remember, when goodness is born from the heart, God sees it, honors it, and multiplies it in ways you don't imagine. And on the loneliest paths of your life, when you think you're walking without company, it may be that without knowing it, you're walking just like Daniel, next to God. Years passed. Daniel grew into a man who never forgot where he came from. He married a kind woman named Sarah, who saw in him the same quiet strength and goodness. They had children and raised them with the values that had sustained Daniel through his hardest times: to see people beyond their circumstances, to give even when it costs something, to trust that God walks with the forgotten. Daniel's workshop became known not just for quality work, but as a place where broken people could find healing, where the rejected could find acceptance. He would hire orphans and outcasts, teach them trades, give them not just jobs, but dignity. And to each one, he would tell his story, not to boast, but to give them what he'd been given: hope. The creek where the encounter happened remained special to Daniel. He would walk there often, especially when facing difficult times. He never saw the old man again, at least not in that form. But he always felt the presence, the assurance that he was loved, that he mattered. One evening in his later years, Daniel walked to the creek with his oldest grandson. The boy asked him, "Grandpa, if you could go back and change your childhood, make it so you never had to be hungry or alone, would you?" Daniel thought for a long moment. "No," he said quietly. "Not if it meant missing that encounter by the creek. Not if it meant never learning that God sees the invisible, loves the unloved, and walks with the abandoned. Everything I suffered taught me compassion. Everything I lost taught me what really matters. I wouldn't trade that knowledge for all the comfort in the world." When Daniel finally passed away many years later, surrounded by family, his last words were a whisper only Sarah could hear. "He's here. I can see him. Not as the old man this time, but as he truly is. And it's more beautiful than I ever imagined." So if you're watching this and you feel forgotten, invisible, worthless, hear this: you're not. God sees you. Your suffering is not meaningless. Your life matters more than you know. And the next person who crosses your path, the next opportunity to show kindness, even when it costs you something, might be more significant than you realize. You might be walking with God and not even know it. The measure of your life is not what you have, but what you give. not what you've accumulated, but how you've loved. Be like Daniel. Share your bread. Help the stranger. Keep your heart soft even when the world tries to harden it. And trust that God never abandons his own. Never. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had an experience that changed how you see God? Have you ever been in Daniel's position, having almost nothing but choosing to give anyway? Or maybe you're there right now, wondering if God sees your struggle. Share your story in the comments below. This community is a safe space where your voice matters. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Every time you support this content, you're helping it reach someone who desperately needs to hear that they're not forgotten, that their suffering has purpose, that God walks with the brokenhearted. Your subscription isn't just a number, it's a lifeline to someone scrolling in their darkest moment, looking for a reason to hope. If Daniel's story reminded you that you're not forgotten, that your life has meaning, pass this gift forward. Subscribe to help this message reach someone who's losing hope. Comment below and tell me where you're from, what you're going through, or just say, I needed this today. We're building something bigger than a channel here. We're building a family of faith. Thank you for being part of it.